Hello and welcome to the 12th meetup of the Formbird Fleet Professionals community. Thank you for joining us. It's so good to see you all. Every 2 months, as you probably know, we get together to talk about Formbird Fleet, and as part of the community, make sure you interrupt when there's something you want to ask or tell or share. You probably know me. My name's Paul. And you can find the recordings on our website under the resources tab or on our YouTube channel. You can also watch them at high speed, so you don't have to watch it, it doesn't have to take an hour. But I include timestamps so that you can jump forward to the bits that might interest you. Now, just a reminder, Formbird is now an approved supplier. We're on the state vendor panels. Okay, so I was going to do news from Mark. Instead, we're going to hear from Ian about the 3G shutdown. What does this all mean? And before we do that, we've also got coming up, Adam is going to tell us all about the daily driver check sheet, as well as Paul A is going to give us a rundown on the Angular update for Fleet. So I will go over to you now, Ian, if your microphone is on. And great. So what's the story with the 4G, 3G? What's all that mean?
Paul, what's become very clear is that the Telstra have made the notification that they're going to switch off the 3G network in June 24. So although that sounds like 18, 20 months away, it's coming up very rapidly because many of our customers and also the people that we've been talking to have had a long-term commitment to GPS technology, and that's invariably on 3G format. So they are having to make the decision. And it's a tough one because in many cases they've invested heavily in hardware, is that they have to replace that with the 4G in the time frame that they will be operational in time for the shut off. So what we've done there is we've approached a number of customers and also just sounding out what has been the approach. Is this an opportunity to reevaluate the options that are available? Because you can imagine in 3-5 years of time, the technology has changed and been upgraded and it's got new functionality. So yeah, that's the consequence. And yeah, we're just opening up the discussion. Obviously, because we're Geotab vendors, yes, we have a vested interest in that discussion. But where it's coming from is that Geotab recently was announced as the #1 GPS vendor around the world, and they've got 3 million active units of their technology out there in the marketplace worldwide. So
all right. Okay.
Exciting times. But so, we will try and keep customers across what those requirements are, and yeah.
So the time to plan is now, your migration, if you're currently on a 3G network for your GPS, and because the 4G satellite and 4G terrestrial is coming.
Yes.
And this is a now thing, because there's, as we were talking about before we started recording, there are supply chain issues, and this is causing all sorts of impacts on all sorts of things. So if anyone needs to think about this stuff, it's worth thinking about. Now,
can I just add something, Paul?
Yeah.
The challenge for many of the councils is they've got to get it in as a budgeted item. And historically, the budget period preparation is commencing now. And this is for purchasing in the time frame of post-July 2023. So it's going to take, there's got to be a transition. You've got to dismantle the old hardware and you've got to install new hardware. This will take time. But first of all, we need to be in people's budgets for them and to be fully aware that they're across what the challenges are.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so it is a now thing. Don't be left behind. And now, I guess we can talk about, I was going to talk about focus 3, becoming clarity. So although this is not specifically fleet related, it does have impacts on fleet because we're moving from the AngularJS platform onto Angular. We actually have Paul is going to talk a little bit about that, but just so you know, so everyone knows, Angular is now currently live at Greater Western Water. So that is an enormous a number of things going on all at the same time, all on the new Angular platform. And sounds like it's going okay, but Mark is currently just nursing that through the process because it went live at 10 o'clock last night. So should be something we can talk about in the next meetup, which will be meetup 13. Now, so Paul Arkell, how is the Angular upgrade going for Formbird FLEET?
Yeah, so I've been working on that for about a month now, pretty much exclusively. I think the plan is to roll out the next upgrade as the Angular version, providing it all goes well. So at the moment, we're doing component conversions. So the old components that were written for, well, all of the components that were written for AngularJS, the standard components have all been converted, but the specialized fleet ones that have been written, they're being worked on now.
Yeah.
There's probably about, I think there's about 3 or 4 devs doing all that work.
All right.
With me and Mike and Dion sort of coordinating it. About half of those components have been converted back to rule sets. So, and the other half, out of those half, so half of them are done in terms of conversion back. Moving forward with those components, about half of the remaining of those half are still in dev. So, yeah, in total, I think there was about 25 components to do, and so that leaves about 6 to go.
Right. Okay. So it's sort of closer to the end and the beginning.
Yeah. So in terms of components, yeah, they, of course, all they all need to be tested and in the environment itself.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a lot of changes going on in terms of the components, just a basic changeover.
So why is it so exciting moving to Angular? Why should people care? Why should the members of the community care?
I think people will see a couple of benefits straight off the bat, and the major one will be speed. The asset that currently loads, it probably takes about 15 seconds to load an asset, which is, a long time. It now takes less than, say, 3 seconds to load an asset.
It's fast. That's fast.
Yeah. So the other benefit is that I've been able to move a lot of the overlay templates. So when you needed to go sort of navigate away from the asset to sort of see some of the data, which meant that if you had sort of changed some of the data on the main document, you would need to save that and navigate away from that and then navigate back if you need. And so that was a little bit clunky too. So I've been able to sort of move a lot of those overlay templates back onto the asset. And so the benefit there will basically be you've got all of the reference information on the same document, so you don't have to travel somewhere else and do saves and updates via those methods that we had in place before.
Right. So there's sort of some optimizations as well happening.
Yeah. The other advantage is that the offline is not available in the old version, but it is available in this version, and I'll be looking to put that in hopefully with this release, I don't really know a lot about it, so there's a bit of a learning curve for me. But if I can get it in this release, it will be really good.
Excellent.
But if not this release, then it'll be there'll be the immediate release after that, which would be coming quite quickly, I think. So
excellent. Oh, everyone's got something to look forward to there.
Would that also include work orders as up the increase in speed for work orders?
yeah, everything across the board, Marie, and I'm going to shift a lot of those overlays on the work orders back onto the document as well, so that people don't need to navigate away to do that sort of work as well, because it all gets a bit clunky. But the reason that it was put in that way was basically to address speed. If you've got in the Angular JS version, once the document was loaded up with a certain amount of components and fields, it would just slow down so badly. It was, for something like a work order that needs to load quite quickly, that it became quite clunky. So moving some of those things off onto overlay templates solved that a little, but it's kind of a band-aid solution until the Angular version came along.
Well, what about things like the customer created work orders and things that like BRC have done? Where does that fall into the space for the Angular conversion?
They all need to be done too.
Is that you're doing it? We're doing it? Who's doing that?
I'll be doing it.
Okay. So is there consultation required before that process in case we need any changes, or will we have the ability to edit after you've moved it over?
There won't be any changes. I'm just going to convert what's there,
Okay.
and you can do edits as you please.
Okay.
There's no changes in terms of template editing and etc.
Okay.
It's not going to be like when you get a new version of Word and you've got no idea how to use it.
No, it is very much back end stuff. There are a few sort of front end things in the templates, but they're all set up. They'll all be set up, and you can just go ahead and do the editing like you used to.
Yeah, from my understanding, just so everyone understands, is that the platform layer sits below the application layer. So the application is kind of what you see, and then the platform is the bit that is being transformed from one and into the next, into Angular. So that Angular layer is sort of the backbone, and then under that is all your data. So the Angular connects the application with the data, essentially. That's my really bad explanation of it, but I'm working on it. Now, has anyone got any questions about the Angular upgrade? Because we've got two. All right, that's your chance to have a question, because now we're diving deep, aren't we, Adam? What are we going to dive deep into?
Sorry, just while I unmute myself there. Caught me off guard slightly, Paul. Yeah, so we're just going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the daily driver check sheet functionality. And this is going to be from the perspective of the latest changes. So it might be a little bit ahead of most customers' production environments, but I thought that was a better approach than going through it all in an older version, only for it to be updated in the future. So we've got a few customers going through implementing daily driver check sheets at the moment. Golden Plains has recently done it. Brimbank's looking at it at the moment, and Cardinia is also going through it at the moment. So we've got a few really working in this space right now. So it's an optimum time to do a deep dive on this and get everyone across it and on the same page and go through these new bits of functionality. So daily driver check sheets, just as a brief intro, I think everyone knows this. They're often called pre-start checks. I've heard our customers refer to them as. So in Fleetland, it seems to be pre-start checks. So they're important and often mandated as well for operators to complete before using a fleet asset. Really, in Formbird FLEET, they're helping to ensure that the asset's safe to operate, that issues can be identified and rectified as quickly as possible, the asset's registered, and that the operator is suitably trained to operate the asset as well. So we've got lots of checks built in there to help those processes. with like the identifying and rectifying of issues quickly, the daily driver check sheet in Formbird FLEET is like essentially a vehicle to translate data from operators to the workshop in the most efficient way and fastest way possible, collecting all the data that's needed. So doesn't need to be lots of back and forth, and eliminating that huge lag time that you can get with paper processes. And, in terms of getting, a wad of pre-start checks at the end of the month or the end of the week, and some are wet and some are lost. And that just trying to smooth out that process and make it as easy for everyone as possible. So I'll go through a few things today. I'm going to talk a lot about from the operator perspective, because the daily driver check sheets and the operator's use of the application are really deeply intertwined. So I'll start off from the operator's perspective, and then kind of dive into how the workshop's going to deal with it as well, and deals with those daily driver check sheets that the operators create. And then lastly, talk just very briefly about the configuration side of it as well. If anyone has any questions as we go along, feel free to jump in. You don't have to put your hand up or anything. Just turn off your mic and interrupt me. I'll just share my screen now, so bear with me while I. Oh no, Paul, I need you to enable participant screen sharing. You're on mute at the moment.
I still managed to do the job.
There we go.
I had to mute myself, let the dog in.
That's quite all right. Just bear with me while I organise myself. Can everyone see my screen there? Yes?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Paul. So this is our operator view of the application, and forgive me, I'm going to flick between the kind of the operator side and also the more admin supervisor side. So I'm kind of playing two parts today. But this is the operator view, so I'm logged in as an operator account, and this is our operator menu. So this is what they see when they log into the application. We've got a list.
Can I just ask a quick question, Adam? So is that the asset
absolutely.
that actually is attached to that particular operator? So it's not every asset that an organisation has, it's just that person's asset?
So we have a few filters here. You've literally asked the question just
sorry.
as I was about to talk about it. No, it's good. It's good. It's good engagement. It's better than me talking the entire time. So we've got these filters here. So it defaults to the assets that are allocated to the person. But they can also access the full list of assets by changing that filter to all. So just in case someone might be using an asset that they don't usually use, but maybe the system hasn't been updated to reflect that usage, for example. Does that answer your question?
Adam,
Yes.
it's Michelle here. The other thing too here is for allocator responsible is great for, let's just say, maybe light vehicles or something. But for a larger asset, there'll be multiple operators at any given time. So if you were to update the allocation responsible, that's all you'd be doing all day. So they would actually have to go to the all scenario.
Yeah, that's correct.
An asset that's shared by multiple people at any one time.
Yeah.
So does that only open up the capability though to the pre-start for all, or does it open up to everything within the Formbird system for all? Just sort of looking at that user security level type of.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the operators are really limited to what's on this page here. Okay. So they can only complete the actions that are in these buttons, really. So creating daily driver check sheets, repair requests, and adding and removing safety tags, and bulk fuel transactions, but I won't go into that today. They can also, so we've got a works information panel, so they can see the works that they have created themselves. But any operators who are listed as a supervisor to another operator, you can also see the works that they've created as well.
Thank you.
We've also got external hire work orders that are assigned to me as well, but I'm not going to dive into that. Let's try and stick to the daily driver check sheet side of things. Otherwise, we'll be here all day.
Yeah, Adam, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Just a quick question, and it might be something further down the track you may touch on, but I did see there a button to remove safety tags.
Yep.
we give operators that access?
Yes, that's currently the design at the moment. This hasn't been rolled out to customers yet.
Yep. Okay. Okay.
So I have heard a few conflicting advice, I guess, from different clients around who has the authority. I've heard that operators or whoever puts the safety tag on the asset should also remove it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also heard that only certain people are qualified to add or remove safety tags. So this is actually probably a good question for this group here today. Is how does that actually operate now within your organization?
Well, the way I understand that it should operate is that whoever put the safety tag on has the ability to remove it, but not without reference to a supervisor. So it gives some, I guess, double checking on the removal of a safety tag. Certainly not an operator.
I agree, Pat. BRC is the same.
I'm with you guys too.
So I'll ask a few more questions. So operators, do they put on a safety tag?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like tag out an asset?
Yeah.
But they don't remove a safety tag?
No, not unless the actions have been signed off by, whoever. It might be the workshop supervisor or someone similar.
Mm-hmm. So they can remove it, but as long as it's been signed off.
Yeah, it needs to be a two-person process. So there needs to be checks and balances there.
Yeah.
Otherwise we get an operator come along, sees a tag, and removes the tag and uses the item.
And usually the person who does the tag is who has to be the person removing the tag. But like Pat just said, there's a check and balance process as well.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So the workshop really needs to sign off on it.
Yeah.
With the remove safety tag button, if someone was to click that, is there a record as to who clicked it and removed the tag, or does it just show then that it's been removed?
Good question.
Yeah, so every change to any document, so in this case, an asset, essentially what happens when they add the safety tag, it adds a field to that document or adds a record to that document to say that it's tagged out. And then when that change is made to remove the tag, that's also then that tag is removed from the asset within the application, and every change to any document is recorded and fully audited.
Thank you.
I think I'm comfortable with what you guys have described there in terms of how that tag out process needs to work for you guys. So that's good. Thank you for that input. I'll carry on as it is at the moment. So where was I? Filters. Right, so we've got these different filters here. So in this assets panel, this is where the operators can do stuff. We've got different filters to change what the operator can see here. So they can see a list of favorites, allocate a responsible person, tagged out, and all the assets. So that's all the assets that are tagged out. With the favorites list, this can also, I think, address what Michelle was talking about with multiple operators using the same bit of, significant plant, I guess, that might be shared across different people. So you can actually add assets to your favorites. So for instance, if I just go to my all filter and I just select one of these random assets, or maybe I might select, I'll just select one of those random assets, and I'll then add that asset to my favorite. And then if I go back to my filter grid, we've now got that asset displayed in my favorites filter. So that kind of helps to address people who might use an asset regularly, but it's not necessarily allocated to them within the application.
Adam, can I just ask you a question? So how do you just do that now? Can you instead, because realistically, we've got 1,600 assets. They're not going to scroll down because most people are using a tablet or a phone. A search function on the right-hand side, rather than putting in the asset number, because when you tell you go, what's the asset number? And they go, I don't know. Can you search by, the word John Deere or something without starting with the asset ID and the search criteria to to minimise that filtering?
Yeah, absolutely. I generally prefer the column filters up here because this actually searches the whole document. So you can the results can be a bit funny. But these column filters will just search what's actually displayed in that column. So in the naming of the asset, it's got an asset ID, a make and a model, and then it's also got the registration. So that's like the default way that we've set up assets to be labeled, to be named. So I can search for Volvo, for example, and it will give me all of the Volvo assets. Or I might want to search for a particular registration that includes 829, for example. And you can see that I get back all the assets that include 829 in that name, which is made up of that asset ID, make and model, and registration.
Right, thank you.
No worries. Good question, Michelle. Thank you. So, cool. And then if you decide you want to remove a favorite from your list, you can also select it, change the filter grid to favorites, select that in the grid, and then to remove selected favorites, and it disappears. So we've got our allocated responsible. So this is where there's an allocation document that has my user connected to it, or an asset that has my user listed as the responsible person. We've also got tagged out here. So this gives me a list of all the assets that are tagged out. So at the moment, and clearly based on the feedback today, we've got a little bit more tweaking to do on this functionality, but I think it's making good progress. At the moment, to remove a safety tag, we can select an asset and click remove safety tag, and that'll remove that from the list. And there's a little pop-up there that encourages the operator to follow any physical process as well. So it's all good and well to say, oh, this is what's recorded in the application, but I imagine in most scenarios, there's going to be a physical process that goes along with it. So like a physical tag that goes on the asset. Would that be correct, Marie or Michelle? Yeah, cool.
Can I just give some feedback on the pop-up information?
Yep.
So things like when you have, save, like, when we're closing a ticket, something's saved and it pops up green and that goes away. That's great.
Yep.
But the feedback that I'm getting as well is when something is an orange, like your attention is required or an error, can you hold that at least a little bit longer? Because people have come to me going, it's popped up, oh, it's disappeared. I didn't see what it was. Can you hold that a little bit longer, or even get the user to close it?
Yeah. So things like that we can often change to a dialog box that appears. The balance is, of course, the more dialog boxes that you put up, kind of the more things that the user has to kind of get through. So there's definitely a balance there. But I agree with you. For something like that, even I experienced it then. It didn't really hang around long enough for me to actually be able to read what was said. So yeah, those are definitely things we can tweak.
This is only for actionable items, not hello saved. Yes, okay, we don't need that. But something that is an alert or some description that really is important would be, there is a balance. Either keep that there for longer or dialog box it.
All right, so I'll continue along now, and I'll actually go through the process of creating a daily driver check sheet. So I'm going to go to my all filter, and like Michelle was asking before, I'm going to find the asset that I'm looking for. In this case, I know the asset ID, so I'm just going to go off that, which is 2496. I'm going to select my asset, and then I'm going to click this button here that says create daily driver checklist. So this has created a new partially blank daily driver check sheet document. It's got a few things pre-populated. So it's got the date that it was created and also who's reported it as well, which is me in this case. And it's also populated the asset here. So assets that have a primary meter measure recorded against the asset. So that's, for instance, distance or hours. If that's selected on the asset itself, then this primary meter reading field is mandatory. So I need to put something in here, which I will just do quickly. There's also the opportunity to put the secondary meter reading as well if the asset has 2 meters. The next section down here is the actual checks. So these are all client configured, so these can be whatever you want. There's options for each check, so you can pass, fail, not applicable, and the operator can also make comments against the check as well. So in this case, I'll fail that one, and I'll just, I'll pass a few of these and put in a not applicable or something like that. And maybe for my my fail, I'll make a comment against it saying that the steering. Oh no, hang on a second. I'll say that the indicators aren't working, for example.
Just as you're working through that, Adam,
Yep.
all questions that appear on this list that's on the page now, are they all mandatory to be answered?
So that's not currently the requirement, but I think it is essential that the operators actually fill out this sheet. And at the end of the day, like, we're replacing a paper system, I guess, that's, the operator wouldn't necessarily have to fill out. The difficulty that we run into with making lots of things mandatory is if for some reason it doesn't suit to be mandatory, then it kind of creates this roadblock for the user that they can't get past. So at this point in time, these are not mandatory.
Adam, one of the questions we've had from operators is, could the text be a bit larger or darker?
Possibly.
Because they've just found
I'll
them
note
with tablets, they sometimes can't really see it very well.
Thanks, Marie.
No worries.
So yeah, we work our way through the list of checks, passing and failing and making comments. We've got a defect description here. This shows up on the work order for those that are familiar with the application. This shows up on the work order as the request description. I'll jump ahead a little bit later on and actually show you how this pops out the other end in the workshop, but I'll come back to that. But I'll pop in a defect description here saying left-hand indicator doesn't work. So this is where the operator just records what they're experiencing. Who knows what the actual root of the problem is? That's for the workshop to figure out. But this is just what the operator is experiencing. We have a priority here. So the operators can either select urgent fleet out of service and non-urgent fleet operational. I'll dive into this a little bit more, but just briefly. Essentially, urgent fleet out of service, this says that the asset can't be used. So this goes straight to the workshop as a request. Whereas non-urgent fleet operational, it goes to a dash for the workshop to manage in a pending status. And that's to address things like, something minor like a dent in a panel or a scratch or something like that is maybe reported day after day because it's not urgent to fix and the fleet's still working. But you may not want a request generated for each of those instances that an operator reports that failure.
Yeah,
and
Adam,
then
would there
yep.
be the possibility of some components here, as soon as the checker or the operator has declared it as a fail, that it automatically goes urgent?
Oh, so saying, are you asking that based on a certain check failing that it automatically becomes urgent?
Yeah. So if tires, wheels fail because there's no substructure there, it's basically it's out of service.
Technically it becomes quite difficult to get into those sort of things. Like, everything's possible, but it's a dangerous path to go down, because then, like I was kind of talking about before with mandatory items, if you make the path too narrow, it doesn't allow for the user to actually navigate properly through the application. And it means that if something's like not set up right, it's like an added layer of configuration. So if something's not set up right, then the user's going to experience that and it might not be fixed straight away. So look, it's definitely possible, but it's got to be considered whether it's the right approach, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Don't worry.
Yeah. Adam, for the most part, and look, I'm speaking, and I'd like to hear back from Marie and Pat, etc., is a daily driver's checklist primarily is not looking at everything. It's looking at items that will take that asset off the road. You can't use it. Seatbelt not working, sorry, you're not moving. You know, tyres worn, you're not going anywhere. You're not using it today. So if it is a fail, primarily the questions that are in here are going to be, it's not being used today. Pat, Marie, are you finding that same in your case for a daily driver's checklist?
Not necessarily. Like when you say fluid levels and you're checking fluid levels, that's not going to put a vehicle out of operation. You would top up fluid levels. You know, things like if the drawbar or tow hitch. I'm trying to think. Yeah, body external damage. If it's got panel damage, you're not going to pull it off the road.
Yeah.
No. A lot of our questions would be not like that. They would really be more so if it's a fail, you're pretty much not going to be using it.
It's really only those critical items that would deem it unroadworthy, unsafe, etc. And as Marie said, yeah, fluid levels, bodywork, etc., is not going to cause it to be tagged out of operation.
When we create the daily driver's checklist, can we put a weighting against the question just for this reason, that it is a critical item? So if it's a fail, it's critical, as opposed to it failed, but it's not going to pull it off the road.
Yeah, look, again, everything's kind of technically possible. It's just varying degrees of time required, both from a development point of view, but also from the setting up and the configuration of the application for each client as well. So each layer of functionality and optionality that we put in is another layer that has to be configured for the client. So look, it's possible. I'd say maybe another approach would just be to provide instruction to the operator within the check name to say that if this fails, then it's the fleet is out of service, that kind of thing.
Yep, that's fair.
Adam, also when the operator puts in a comment when it's a fail, can that comment automatically come down into the defect description? Because we're finding that people are putting in comments, then they're not filling out the defect description. So we then have to go in and retype what that is, because otherwise it doesn't appear in the work order.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that, Marie. I'll definitely note that one down.
And
I'm not sure. We'd have to look at it technically whether it's possible.
Okay.
And for the most part, when operators are doing this, they're not setting out a computer. When we do it on a computer, it's very easy, but on a tablet or a phone, it's a much slower process to type.
Yeah,
definitely. And on that point, Michelle, I think it's a good one. Trying to limit the number of checks that they actually need to complete, like keeping it relatively broad in that you're not kind of going down to each minute detail of the asset, I think might be a good approach. I haven't done it from your guys' side, so I'm not sure, but I get the sense that the more checks that you have in there, that's like kind of the more clicks that the operator has to do each day. So kind of keeping those as efficient as possible, I think would be a very worthwhile approach.
Yeah, we would be concentrating on just mainly critical items.
Yeah.
But again, you don't want a daily driver's checklist to be taking somebody, 20 minutes to do.
Not at all. And there's space to provide more detail in the comment section, like we've kind of just described. Like with all requests and work orders and things, we have the ability to attach an image. So on the desktop, it obviously shows up, pulls up this page from your browser. On a phone, it can open up the camera on the phone, so you can just take a picture of whatever's wrong with the asset straight away. And that's to help the workshop diagnose the issue, particularly if the service is being requested in the field, for example. For instance, in Bundaberg. So I can pull up the map and put in the address or pin it on the map itself. And again, this comes back to communicating information as clearly as possible between the operators in the field and the workshop. So the map can tell them where they need to go, and the pictures can help them to diagnose the issue from afar, and ensure that they bring all the right tools or the right replacement parts with them. I'll just save that one there. And currently, this is where the operators, and I think we'd maintain this even with the feedback we've had today, this is where the operators can also tag out the asset. So obviously, if the priority is urgent fleet out of service, that enables them to tag out the asset. If it's non-urgent fleet operational, they can't tag out the asset. We have the option to email their supervisor. So this will send a notification to me because I'm my own supervisor. And I'll just quickly show you the email that comes across. So this is the notification that the supervisor will receive if someone, another operator who has them listed as a supervisor, tags out an asset.
So that email only comes if it's being tagged out.
If it's been tagged out and the operator clicks the yes button that they want to notify the supervisor. All right, so that's kind of completing a daily driver check sheet. I will now.
Is there an opportunity of an operator having a signature thing at the bottom where they can just scribble a signature in?
Yeah, what do you see is the extra added value?
Well, the reason our operators have requested it is because people share tablets, and if someone doesn't log out and someone goes in and logs in under somebody else, then a signature on the bottom would kind of clear them of wrongful doing, I say.
Yeah, Maria, I agree. That would be really good, a signature panel.
Yeah, I guess yeah.
I'll just have a comment there. Look, the system records the user everywhere. So if people are using other logins that are not their own, that's a much wider problem than just the daily driver. I think because it's recorded, like every change is recorded on every version of who did it. So if you're ever trying to track down anything, that becomes quite an issue if somebody's logged into somebody else.
Guys, we can also turn on, sorry, Mark chiming in here. We can also turn on a logout after a passive period. At the moment, it's sort of defaulting to infinite, but we can turn on the auto logout. So it disconnects the user if they're passive for X period. So we can set a number of minutes.
That would probably be beneficial.
Would that be across the board being Formbird in total, or just when we're talking daily drivers check sheet? Because at the moment, all of our guys have a tablet. However, not everybody in all circumstances has one. So if it's 100% all or nothing, that's, you're going to get more feedback from people going, it's just logged me out again. You'd have to be able to set some sort of system level, something where you can say, well, for this, yes, we're doing it, but for that, we're not, because.
No, it's system wide. It's a cookie setting on the login. It's a cookie setting on the overall, but it's you have to be inactive, so it doesn't automatically log you out every 10 minutes sort of thing if you're using it. It's like a normal logout. If you don't use it for an hour or 3 hours or 12 hours, it'll log you out. So if you say set it for 8 hours, it means that they'll get logged out at 1 a.m. or whatever it is after they last used it at 6.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, as long as we can, yes, we can set that, and it's not a system-wide setting.
No, it is a system-wide setting. It's based on the login cookies, so everyone gets the same setting against their cookies, which is their authentication cookie.
Yeah, but if you set it to a 7 or 8 hour thing, then that would suffice.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It normally becomes a sort of corporate policy issue rather than an individual user issue. It's the way you kind of want to operate. It obviously adds a level of security because it's making sure people are disconnecting.
Correct.
So quick question about the daily drivers checklist on that page right there. So where, Adam, you've got recorded by Adam Griswood, can you delete that or you can't?
Look, I can't remember from the operator, certainly can't. I can't quite remember off the top of my head if you can as like a supervisor or administrator.
No, that's okay. I'm talking from an operator's perspective because we don't want what Marie sort of said before, right? We want that actually kept in, so that's a good thing. And how often would someone be prompted to fill one of these out?
Prompted?
Yeah. Because like say, for example, let's say light vehicle.
Yeah.
Person in the morning does this, they drive it, they bring it to work, it is available for others to use. Then technically, the next person who jumps in that vehicle should also do that as well.
Mhm.
Is there any form of prompting or anything, or is it up to the person to actually go daily driver's check sheet and fill it in themselves?
Yeah, we've had this conversation with a number of different customers, and where we've kind of kept coming back to is the rules to kind of automate any kind of prompting are going to be really, really complicated. So for instance, we've got business hours on an asset, right? So you say this asset's going to be used on these days at these times. So that's something that's a bit of data that we have that we could use to create something like that. But the issue becomes, all right, what if it's raining so the asset isn't used? What if the person's on leave? What if their asset's out of service? Maybe we could deal with that one. There's a lot of edge cases where people are going to be prompted to do stuff when they don't necessarily need to. So as with most of these things, comes down to this balance kind of discussion. What does really enable us to build in those systems is integration with a telematics provider. So if we can say the asset's being turned on, then yes, we can prompt whoever's, prompt that the daily driver check sheet should be completed and send those notifications. But without that really solid information about the asset is being used, definitely, it's a fraught exercise to try and create those rules. Like it's possible, but again, it comes back to an enormous amount of configuration from clients to be able to say, this person's working today, or this asset's in use today or not in use today. And with hundreds of assets, it quickly becomes kind of an unmanageable task. Does that address your question, Michelle?
Yep, thanks, Adam.
No worries.
The other thing you could look at is if a person goes in to do a pre-start check and somebody's already done one for that morning, it could maybe pop up and say a pre-start check has been done. Do you want to review it? And then it just logs, okay, it's already got all the questions, they've already been answered that morning. And only if you find a difference, you can then put in a comment, but it's practically the same pre-start check. It's just logging in different person that reported it.
Because it comes down to what the rules are across all organizations, I guess. Are you doing it per person? I think for me, if I was an operator, I'd probably want to do the checks myself.
Yeah,
at which point I might as well complete the form. But then if Paul comes along later and hops in this car, he's probably just going to need to complete the checks as well as an operator, wouldn't he?
That's right. Yeah, no, I get you actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to flip out of the operator view of the world and go over to the administrator side of things. So let's get rid of that one. So when the daily driver check sheets are completed, they can head to two places. Well, yeah, two places. If they're in that urgent fleet out of service priority, then they're automatically generated as a request, which will show up in the workshop. If they're non-urgent fleet operational, then the request isn't necessarily generated and they come to this daily driver check listing page in a pending status. What they look like for the workshop, if I just look at this one, that's 171, I'll go across the all workshop dash. So if I look at this all workshop dash and I have my list of all of my requests here, and I search for day D171, you can see that request that was priority urgent fleet out of service has come automatically to the workshop dash for the workshop to deal with that because that fleet is out of service. I can also just filter it by days, and then I get to see all of my daily driver check sheets that have come across to the workshop. Going back to my
Can you go back to that? No, your all workshop dash, please, Adam? Yep.
Back.
So from an all workshop dash, if something is a high priority, apart from just filtering it there, is there something at the top there that is an indicator to that workshop that there is something they need to look at urgently, like your buttons that are coloured or something there?
Your questions are so good today, Michelle. They're just leading me in all the right directions. They're really good. So you can see with these buttons, and I don't think this has quite been rolled out to production environments yet, but Paul's done a heap of work on these dashes to make them cleaner and faster and all of this stuff. And part of that is these buttons, and you can see that we've got a few different buttons here that are colored. And you can see that there's an urgent button here with this red 28 number. So this will give me all of my requests that have a priority of urgent fleet out of service. And they could be repair requests or daily driver check sheets. You can also filter using change the table displayed below using the daily driver request button, and that'll show me all my daily driver requests as well. And then you can also see all of the daily drivers as well. Sorry?
Could I put in a request there? If you scroll to the top, please, again.
Yep, the buttons.
So can you put on your urgent button there, see how you've got your work order type missing, you've got a red around it? Can you put a red box or something around that? Because I could see that urgent is about urgent. They need to bring their attention to it quickly. If you can put a big border around it like you have on the other ones, that'd be great.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And on the left, just above there, you know how your new groovy looking graphs, can you put them in alphabetical order, please? Otherwise, again, we're scrolling to find something. Because they're not in alphabetical order.
So would that be for everything?
The work order types, there, that one, that one. Yeah.
But potentially the work order status is not being alphabetical is probably better because then it's more sequential through a process.
Yes,
right?
That makes sense. New in progress, that makes sense. And up the top, pending, yeah, that sort of can make sense. But the work order types on the second graph below, okay, pending. What's it say? Pending. What's the top one? Pending
DD, daily driver.
Oh, okay, right. Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Work order type.
Yeah, that would be coming from. Otherwise, we're scrolling a lot trying to find what.
We'll have a look at it.
Yep, fabulous.
Happy for me to jump along?
Yes, thank you.
So I'll just pop back to this daily driver check listing quickly because there's a few key operations that need to be done on this page. So first of all, we've got a few filtering things. Obviously, you know, the normal kind of filtering by date. We can also change the status, the statuses that we're displaying. So if I only want to see my pending daily driver check sheets, so they're ones that require action from the workshop to actually, or from whoever's managing this page to actually do something with, then I can see just my pending ones. I can also see my open ones and my closed ones as well. Maybe I just want to see my closed ones. I'll just pop back to pending. I can also, it defaults to only show ones that show up fails. So you're going to be completing lots and lots of daily driver check sheets. Most of the time, you probably don't want to see the ones that haven't had any issues reported. But if you do for any reason, you can uncheck that box and that will display all of the daily driver check sheets, including those ones that don't have any fails. Like for instance, this one here that doesn't have any fails. Click that one. We'll go back to display failed only. We have a few buttons across here. We've got open selected as request and change selected to request. So these are for pending daily drivers. So what I need to do is I need to select one of them and then I can change that selected to the request. These basically do the same thing. This button on the left just opens it for you as well, whereas this one just changes it and makes it a request. You can also close the selected pending as well. So that's like if you identify that no work actually needs to be completed, then you can close it. There's a few key columns across here that I'll just draw your attention to quickly. The first one obviously is status, which we've used those checkboxes up here to change what we're displaying in terms of the daily drivers with which statuses. We've got whether the request has been generated, so that's whether it's been sent to the workshop and the workshop can see it on that all workshop dash or the supervisor dash. We've got our priority, so urgent fleet out of service, non-urgent fleet operational. We've got the failed checks that have been checked, so where there are multiple, they'll display multiple. And then we've got this column here, which I'll draw your attention to specifically, which is duplicate failure last reported within 30 days. So this is to help whoever's managing this page identify whether the same thing is being reported across multiple days and help them make decisions about whether they need to change that to a job in the workshop or whether they just want to close it and say, yep, we're aware of it. We've already got a request open about it. We don't want to create another request. Does that make sense? So for example, with this particular asset here, 2496, it's had the failed check all controls reported a bunch of times. And you can see that it also displays in the last 30 days when it was previously reported. So in this one here, it's saying that I found this daily driver check sheet has reported that issue previously. And then this one here is saying, oh, I found this one and also this one reported in the last 30 days. This one has found these 3 that were reported in the last 30 days. And this top one here has found these 4 that were reported in the last 30 days. So the workshop can then come to this page and say, okay, well, I've already got, I'll change this to pending, I think, quickly. So in this example, I've got 2 pending daily driver check sheets with all controls reported as the failure. I've got this one here, which shows some duplicates, and this one here that was probably the original, doesn't show any duplicates. So then as the workshop supervisor or whoever's doing this page, they can select whether they want to create these, send these to the workshop as requests. So I can't imagine that you'd want to create 2 of the same, but you could. You could change them both to requests for the workshop to manage. That's going to be a duplication. They're the same failure that's being reported. So you're probably going to take one of them and change that one to a request. So I'll do that. That's obviously taken it out of my pending list. So I'll just put it back to open. And we can see it. I can't remember which one it was actually, but we can see we've got another one that's been sent to the workshop as a request now. We can also close selected pending. So for this other one that's a duplicate, we don't want it to sit in pending forever. So we can select it from the table here and close a selected pending. We can also use some predefined reasons for closing. So there's a record of why it was closed. Note that this is a drop-down open drop-down. So you can select from the options that have been predefined at an application level. Or the user can define their own reason that they want to say why they're closing the pending daily driver. In this case, I'll select duplicate and I'll close selected pending. So now that one's gone away.
It's looking good. Can I ask a request in the priority column?
Yes.
Again, words are harder to read. If you can, Paul, if you can put one of your red exclamation icon, something, because that way that draws the attention to that person's eye much faster than reading the word urgent or not urgent. Only put it on the urgent ones. You know, like an icon. You know, the icon that you have.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Michelle. We'll take a look at it.
Yeah, the feedback is the workshop technicians and supervisors use those colours predominantly rather than the reading because it's so much faster to find something.
Yeah, colour's good. That's good feedback. Thanks, Michelle. The last element of this, which I'll quickly go through, is just very briefly how to configure these checks. So we've got all these checks on a daily driver check sheet. How do they come to be? So I'll get out of there and go back to my home page. Under the configuration menu, there's 2 bits that I'll draw your attention to. We've got daily driver risk assessment configuration, and we've also got asset component group mappings as well. So daily driver risk assessment, this is where I can create both new question categories and also new daily driver check questions. So you can just click on the button, create a new question. My new question, put it against a particular category. So administration, for example. I'll save that. And I'll go back to my home page. And under the configuration menu, so I've made my check. I need to now say, what assets do I want this check to show up under? You know, obviously a garbage truck might have different checks to a Corolla, for example. So we can actually do some level of customization here. So I can go to my asset component group mapping documents, and this gives me there's one of these that relates to each asset template. So I'll just find one that I want to use. So I might use the passenger vehicle. Click on my passenger vehicle asset group mapping. And then so we can see here we've got all our daily driver checks that are currently configured for any vehicles that belong to the asset type of passenger vehicle. I can create a new check in here. My new check, my new question. I can save my changes. And then if I pop back to my workshop, my operator view, oh no, it's not gone well. I've accidentally closed it. I'll just quickly find a passenger vehicle here and create a daily driver check sheet. Oh, this is the one bit that I didn't prepare for, so may have made a slight error here. Got to find something that's actually a passenger vehicle. Ford Ranger. And you can see that now my new check question is showing up on these daily driver check sheets for any assets that are passenger vehicles that belong to that asset type. That's a very brief, obviously, introduction to the configuration side of it, but I just wanted to briefly touch on it so you can see how all this comes to be on this daily driver check sheet form. Essentially, the lowdown of that is that these checks show up based on what asset is actually selected and what asset type that asset belongs to. Any questions about that? All good? I think we've ticked over an hour here, so we've gone on quite a long time, but I'm happy to answer any questions in general about daily driver check sheets or any other aspect of the application that anyone would like to discuss.
I've got one.
Go for it.
Our supervisors are asking to be able to see that their staff have completed a pre-start check.
So we're not talking workshop supervisors, we're talking someone who is supervising other people in the organisation.
Yes. So if they're listed as a supervisor in the system, can they have access to see the pre-start checks have been completed for their area?
Yeah. Paul, where did we get to with this one? We've had this brought up a few times. I can't quite remember where we've landed at the moment.
You're on mute, Paul. Might have lost Paul. We might have lost
Paul at the moment. No worries. Yeah, I think that's a fair question, Marie. Yeah, people supervisors wanting to see what their people have actually done, whether there are failures or not.
Yeah. And the other thing was that once somebody has conducted a daily driver check,
yep,
if they were to be involved in an accident out on the road,
mm-hmm,
the police or Vic Roads ask them, can we see your pre-start check? They need to be able to retrieve it.
Oh, sorry. School rang me. What was the question, Adam? Sorry.
It was just around people supervisors, so not workshop supervisors. People supervisors being able to view what daily driver checks had been completed by their reports, I guess. Not necessarily failures, just to see what they're actually completing. And then also operators being able to view, being able to access their completed daily driver checks.
Yeah, I think that's all been done.
Yeah, I couldn't remember where it quite is at the moment.
No, I can't remember off the top of my head either, but I did some work around that.
Yeah, I thought we did.
And I think it's with you to review or not. I'd need to check, but like I said, I did some work around it. I think it's done.
Cool. We'll come back to you on that one, Marie.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. Well, I think we have run over time. So are you happy to leave it there, Adam?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've talked for far too long. Ready for a drink of water.
Question that is not related to the daily driver's checklist.
Oh, is that you, Marie?
No,
That's Michelle.
It's Michelle. Okay.
So Adam, this is what we talked about previously on the downtime report, and I just wanted to throw it to the community what their thoughts were on the space. So just to give you a little bit of a background. So the downtime report we use as one of our KPIs that we have to report to our ELT. And at the moment, there's 5 statuses for an asset, which is active, commissioned, decommissioned, awaiting disposal, and disposed. At BRC, and I want to ask the community what their thoughts are on this, downtime is only relevant if an asset is of active status. Every other status, it's not allocated to a person, so they're not losing any potential downtime because it's past that space. What are your thoughts in that area?
We actually don't use the downtime thing, Michelle, so I can't help you on that one. For me, anything that's out and operational, there's no downtime.
Yeah, so only active assets are technically, they're the ones who are going to be, yeah, but when they're in on a workshop, they're being worked on.
Yep.
If the asset at the asset level is marked as active, i.e. it's out and about, but we're working on it, therefore the person can't have access to it, that's downtime. But if the asset is commissioned, i.e. hasn't been allocated to anyone yet, decommissioned, they've passed it over, it's awaiting disposal or in fact disposed, none of those items except active actually should register downtime.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody else can use that report anyway, because the KPIs are your KPIs and probably not anybody else's. So unless there's an industry-wide KPI that says X%, then it's really just it's probably not very useful to any of the other customers.
It's not the percentage, Paul, because that percentage is not the percentage we use in the downtime report. It's more so the fact that it's pulling every asset in.
I understand that, but it's the pass fail in that report is based around a percentage. Now, if anybody
we don't use that, Paul, because the pass fail percentage is not correct. We just need to pull the assets, but we only want the ones reporting on active assets, not commissioned, decommissioned, or waiting disposals.
Yeah.
So would that be for, like, so you don't want any assets that are in any of those other status even displayed in that report? Or is it about for a given time period?
So for a given time period, because obviously an asset can change status during that time period, obviously, but we only want to capture the time period while the asset is marked as active.
Yeah.
Every other status is not relevant to a downtime. I don't mind that the percentage.
So it's in the calculation, but the assets still need to be listed in that report if they were active during the period that you're saying to run that report, basically.
Yes, but if they're not during that period, we don't want that calculation. So if an asset 1, 2, 3, 4, halfway through the period went into decommission. Yeah. Don't capture that time when it went into decommission, only during the time of active status.
Yeah, I understand.
For the percentage KPIs, we don't refer to that because that's not our number, but we just need to pull the data. Yeah,
and there is still a percentage on that report, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's
before it compares it to the KPI. Yeah.
Yeah. So
are there any other sites that might want to provide their input or their take on downtime and when downtime is relevant for an asset?
So for me, downtime is the time it's not on the road or operational. So the downtime is in the workshop downtime.
Yeah. So what Michelle's saying is that you can possess an asset and it can be awaiting disposal or it can be in commission status. Yeah. And there might be jobs relating to it. So there might be requests in the workshop that are managed through Formbird that are active during that period. Michelle's saying that if that's the case, if they're commissioned, for example, or awaiting disposed, and there's a request open that's essentially telling the application that asset is not being used, then they don't want to record that time as actual downtime. Whereas if it's active and there's a request open and the asset, so the indicating that the asset's being worked on, that the business hours that are against that asset should be, if the request is open during the business hours that are recorded against that asset, then those minutes should be counted as downtime.
Yeah, logically, from a workshop perspective, from a fleet management perspective, Michelle is correct. And that is once the unit comes off active, downtime is irrelevant.
I guess one point to note with that, I think it's good that we've got some kind of consensus there. But one point to note with that is it's really the application is really reliant on then the status being accurate when the work's being completed. So keeping those statuses really well up to date, the application is relying on that kind of information to be able to produce good reporting, and using the full request functionality around deferred statuses and all of that as well. It'll become super important to get good data out of those reports.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as in all of this, the accuracy of your data going in is going to affect the accuracy of your data coming out.
Yeah, correct. And again, if you've got good processes in place, which we do have, then those statuses are changed at the correct time. And yes, what Adam was saying, which by the way you said very well, Adam, we may put the asset into decommissioned status. However, yes, we have some work orders pending because there's work to be done. They need to take things off. They need to, they take the rego plates off. There's work to do, but the asset is no longer active. Therefore, it's not registering downtime.
Great. I think back to you, Paul, I reckon.
Wow, there you go. I'm chatting to Mark now. He's going, what's going on? We've gone too long. Well, thank you everybody who's hung in there, and thank you so much to Paul and Adam. You've just witnessed Adam's feature requests on the fly, where we, torture poor Adam and make him dance.
Make him sweat.
Making him sweat. Thanks, Michelle, for your contribution, and everybody else. Now, the next meetup is on the 1st of December. So the 1st of December will be at 11 a.m. in Sydney, and Thursday, 1st of December, and 11 a.m. in Sydney, Melbourne, and 10 a.m. in Queensland. Thank you.
And it's Paul's birthday.
And it's my birthday. So there you go. We can all celebrate with me. I might take the day off. It's your turn, Mark. All right. So thank you, everybody. And we'll get you the recording early next week, hopefully with plenty of good news attached. And see you on the road, I guess, or something, some corny goodbye thing. See you later, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.